The story started in the city of Delhi, India. There was a child named Gaurav Channa who idolizes a superstar named Aryan Khanna. He was so fanatical that he often followed his idol's style, which often annoyed people around him, though he never cared about it. He also put Aryan's poster all over the wall in his room. When he finally grows up, he turned out to have identical look to his idol, making him call himself Aryan Jr. Gaurav's daily life was filled with working in a cafe that he owned himself. One day, he had to close his internet cafe early because he had to attend an event, so he asked his customers to leave the place. And at the same time, his friend whom he had a crush on, Neha, visited the cafe to write a letter regarding her visa application, because she intended to go to America. Not long after, a bunch of men came to the cafe intending to watch an adult film, which made Gaurav so irritated. Trying to stop them, Gaurav ended a fight with them. The fight was later stopped by the people there. Neha told Gaurav to stop acting like a hero like Aryan in his films because she was worried about it. That night, Gaurav was getting ready backstage to take part in a superstar competition that is held every year in his hometown. Because of his identical look to the superstar, Aryan, he had won the competition twice, and that night, he intended to win the competition to get the prize money that he would use to go to Mumbai to meet his idol there. When it was his turn, he went to the stage and acted like Aryan in his films. Everyone was cheering on him. Thanks to his totality, he managed to win first place, defeating the other candidates. When they returned home, Gaurav's mother asked him about his plan to go to Mumbai without buying a ticket because she was worried that he would get caught by the officers. After all, he had no ticket with him. It seems like Gaurav didn't care at all because he just wanted to follow what Aryan had done by going to Mumbai without having to buy a ticket. His main reason for wanting to go meet his idol was to give his winning trophy on Aryan's birthday, which would be held in the next 2 days. The next day, before Gaurav left for Mumbai, his mother gave him a special box of food to be given to Aryan, and because Gaurav believed that he would be able to meet his idol, he immediately took a selfie with his parents to show it later to Aryan. When he met Neha on his way to the station, he also assured her that soon he would be able to meet his idol in person. Later on the train, he had to enter the train secretly so he could avoid being caught by the officers. But shortly after, when he ordered some food, the man sitting right beside him complained about him to the officers who later almost brought him to the police station. Afraid that he wouldn't be able to attend Aryan's birthday, Gaurav did something crazy by threatening to jump out of the train. The officers ended up letting him continue his journey and decided not to arrest him. When Gaurav finally arrived in Mumbai, he immediately went to the hotel that he booked before, the same hotel that Aryan visited at the beginning of his career. When he found out that the room he intended to book was already booked by someone else, he was willing to pay double to get the room. And also later that night at 12, Gaurav celebrated Aryan's birthday in his room. He had considered Aryan as a part of himself. The next day, thousands of fans were waiting for Aryan to show up in front of his house. Seer with full confidence, Gaurav tried to enter his idol's house, but the officers guarding the place stopped him because only journalists were allowed to go inside. Moments like that always happened every year. Just like all of the other fans, Gaurav also immediately shouted while showing the trophy and the food box that he brought. When Aryan showed up, unfortunately, the crowd made him drop the trophy and the food in his hand. He then rushed to take everything before it was destroyed. But sadly, that made him lose the moment to see his idol. But even so, he didn't feel sorry at all because he realized that it was not easy to meet a great actor like Aryan. Shortly after, when Gaurav was in a restaurant, I just saw the news on TV about the ongoing dispute between Aryan and young actor named Sid Kapoor, who is believed to be able to surpass Aryan's achievement in his career. In an interview, Sid Kapoor explained that he would soon take the matter to court. Upon hearing that, Gaurav looked very annoyed. He then decided to come to Sid Kapoor's shooting venue and claimed as his biggest fan. He kept begging to talk with him in private, and because of that, Sid invited him to his private room. Having the chance, Gaurav immediately tied up Sid Kapoor and then forced him to make an apology video to Aryan regarding his statement on TV. Because the video was broadcasted live, many people watched it, but unfortunately, Aryan assumed that Sid Kapoor was just looking for a sensation to boost his popularity. Until the next day, Aryan's manager came to show him the original video that had been sent by someone claiming to be Aryan J, where he had asked Aryan to thank him. Curious about the guy who recorded the video, Aryan immediately contacted Gaurav to ask where he was. And after Gaurav answered, Aryan told him that he would send a driver to pick up Gaurav, so the two of them could meet. Right after hearing that, Gaurav was delighted and immediately contacted his parents to inform them that he would soon meet his idol. But that happiness suddenly disappeared when two members of the police came to arrest him regarding the case he did against Sid Kapoor. When he remembered that he had to immediately meet Aryan, Gaurav decided to immediately escape through the window of the hotel. When he thought that he had managed to escape from the police, one of the police who were chasing him managed to intercept and caught him. At the police station, Gaurav had to feel several heart blows that injured his body. It turned out that the police had been ordered by Aryan to arrest Gaurav, but not to injure him. That's why after they detained Gaurav for 2 days, Aryan asked them to buy tickets so Gaurav could immediately return to Delhi. When Aryan met Gaurav in person, he was shocked because he didn't expect the two of them had the same facial features. However, Aryan was only there to confirm that what Gaurav had done was a crime, and that could make his family worried about him. After finding out that Aryan had deliberately sent the police to arrest him, Gaurav felt very devastated. He arrogantly told Aryan that he was the one that made him what he was now, because without his fans, he was nothing but no one. After 2 nights detained in a cell, Gaurav was finally freed. He chose to go straight back to Delhi. Although feeling very disappointed, he did not tell his parents about everything he had gone through until the next day. Gaurav suddenly decided to sell his internet cafe, and that he only wanted to invest all the money from the sale. He also gathered all Aryan's posters on his wall and burned everything down. He was disappointed and lose his interest in Aryan to revenge for what he had done to him. A year later in London, Aryan was going to hold an event organized by a well-known car brand. He also had to fly to Dubrovnik to attend a wedding party of a well-known figure named Bushiani. He would then return to London for a show. During his visit to London, he made a statement that London was one of his favorite places, as the information was broadcasted. Gaurav was also in London to start his revenge mission. He deliberately came to the Madame Tussauds Museum to see a statue of Aryan, which was being exhibited as one of the world's most important figures. Upon his arrival, a little girl assumed that he was Aryan, so many people started approaching him, right beside Aryan's statue. He expressed his disappointment, which was wrapped into a joke that made everyone entertained. But then, his action escalated too far when he started to make trouble and took one of the officers there as hostage. He threatened the officer using a weapon so he could escape. He then changed his appearance so that no one noticed him. Not long after, when Aryan was practicing choreography in preparation for his performance, his manager told him to go to the backstage because some police were waiting to meet him regarding the incident that just happened in the museum, and after reading the arrest warrant, Aryan tried to explain that it was not him who did that because, at the time of the incident, he was in his house alone, but since no witnesses saw him at the house, his statement was only considered as an alibi. He was then taken to the police station where he finally saw the security camera footage. He once again told the police that he was not the culprit, but since there was no evidence to prove him otherwise, he was accused as the prime suspect of the incident. While on the other hand, Gaurav was still free and was about to head to Dubrovnik to continue his revenge mission with his new identity. The next day, thanks to the help of his lawyer, the interference of the Indian government who deliberately sent someone to help him, Aryan finally managed to get out on parole. But remembering that the problem had become a diplomatic problem between India and Britain, Aryan had to be able to immediately prove that the suspect who was in the museum was not him. When he later arrived at the airport, Aryan was still confused about the person who had disguised himself as him because, at that time, Aryan still did not realize that Gaurav was the culprit behind everything until finally when they were on the plane. All of a sudden, Aryan got a call from Gaurav asking him to apologize for his behavior in the past, but because Aryan refused, Gaurav immediately threatened that within 2 days, he would destroy Aryan's entire career. Without even the slightest fear, Gaurav also said that now, he was also in Dubrovnik, about to continue his revenge. After hearing the threat, Aryan's manager suggested he apologize so that this problem would end, but Aryan said that he wanted to show Gaurav whom he was dealing with without any hesitation, so that he could not act as he pleased. Aryan then ordered the security to check the identities of the staff who would be on duty at the show. But at that time, apart from changing his appearance, Korav also changed his identity so that he could not be recognized temporarily. Arriving at Bushiani's residence, Orion was irritated by Mr. Bushiani's words about the problem in London. Because of the evidence, Mr. Bushiani assumed that Orion was indeed the culprit. He even threatened to kill Orion if he ruined his daughter's wedding ceremony. But to maintain his professionalism, Orion continued to carry out his responsibilities. Before he started the show, he asked his team to guard the entire area. But without realizing it, at that time, Korav was right in front of him. Shortly thereafter, when Arya was reading the letter given by his fans, he was surprised to find that there was a letter forcing him to apologize. That was when Orion realized that Korav had disguised himself as one of the crew. He immediately asked his team to return to find Korav's whereabouts. After knowing that only the makeup room had no security cameras, without wasting their time, they immediately headed there. But unfortunately, they were a little late because when they got there, they couldn't find Korav's. They only saw the message left in the mirror by Korav that made Aryan so angry. Shortly after, Aryan was approached by one of the people in charge of the event, saying that Orion's presence had been awaited by the Bushiani family. Aryan immediately came to the middle of the party to invite Bushiani's daughter to dance with him in front of all the guests who were present. And at the same time, Aryan received the info from one of his men that at this time, Korav was in the corridor with Bushiani's daughter. Turned out that the one dancing with Bushiani's daughter wasn't Aryan but Korav. Aryan immediately rushed there, while on the other hand, Korav had started carrying out his plan, where he deliberately touched Bushiani's daughter's body, making her very uncomfortable. But while she was telling the matter to his family, Korav managed to get away at the same time when Aryans appeared on the scene. He was then accused by Mr. Bushiani. He tried to explain that he was not the culprit, but because he did not have strong evidence. In the end, nobody believed what he said. Even then, Mr. Bushiani immediately kicked him out. Not long after, when Aryan and his team left Bushiani's house, Orion saw the word sorry in the middle of the crowd. He was sure that it was Korav, so he came out of the car and ran after Korav. Korav managed to outrun Aryan until he was finally cornered. Unexpectedly, he decided to jump into the sea to get away from Orion. Shortly after, Aryan was getting ready to perform in London, but his manager suddenly informed him that his show had been boycotted by Bushiani, so nobody would come to see him. Irritated, Orion decided to switch off his mobile so that Korav would no longer be able to contact. As a result of Korav's harassment of Bushiani's daughter, Orion's reputation had been destroyed in such a short time, because almost everyone take action on the streets to demand that Aryan take responsibility for what he hadn't even done. The problem wasn't even done. When Aryan asked for help from the police in India to immediately arrest Korav, the police said that they couldn't do anything, considering that the crime occurred not in their country. The police suggested to Orion return immediately so that they could investigate the case further according to the applicable legal procedures. But before returning to Mumbai, Aryan decided to hold a press conference where he emphasized that he was not the culprit. Therefore, he asked for a little time so that he catch the real suspect and prove that he was not the one behind the incidents. But because Orion was still not willing to mention Korav's name, a journalist mocked him, making him feel mad because for him, a harassment case is not to be laughed at. He then told that he deliberately held the conference not to prove his innocence, but to warn them all to be more careful because the culprit could do anything to anyone. That evening, journalists and also several members of the police were seen right in front of Orion's house to await his arrival. That's why Orion chose not to enter through the main door. He took the back door, even though he was stopped by the security guard at his own house. Thanks to his wife, he was allowed to go inside. She was sure if he is the real Aryan. Unfortunately, it turned out that he was not Aryan, but Korav, and this can be seen clearly on the trophy that was in his bag. Not long after, Korav managed to enter Orion's house. He was immediately hugged by Aryan's wife, and that's when she found out that he was not her. She knew because Korav's posture was very much different from Orion, but to avoid Korav's suspicion, she tried to stay calm. When they were both in the bedroom, she immediately took a gun that was in the closet, but when she was about to threaten him with her gun, she couldn't do anything because her daughter was fast asleep in Korav's arms. Korav then told her that he didn't have any problem with her or her daughter, and he didn't have the intention to harm any of them. He only asked to be taken to Aryan's office. Then, after admiring all the awards that were displayed there, Kurov started destroying everything while confessing that all this time, he idolized the alliance. That's why he was so determined to beat Saeed Kapoor. But when Aryan considered his act of kindness as a Kurov said that Aryan was the real criminal for hurting his loyal fans' feelings. He then left from there. Not long after, when the real Aryan arrived at his house, the officer on duty there was very surprised. Seeing from his expression, Aryan was sure that Kurov was inside. After seeing the mess in his office, Aryan told his wife that he not report the problem to the authorities because they wouldn't be willing to help him. He was determined to solve the problem by himself, even if he had to use violence to make Kurov learn his lessons. The next day, when Kurov was watching Aryan's press conference, suddenly his mother called him to ask him to come home. Turned out Aryan was there with her. He came there alone without any escort, but unfortunately, Kurov refused to meet him since he still owed him an apology. That's why he suggested to Aryan to take part in a superstar competition that night that would be held in the village. In that event, he was ordered to apologize in front of everyone, and if Aryan dared to hurt his parents, Kurov would also do the same thing to Aryan's 2 children and wife. After hearing the threat, Aryan immediately told Kurov's parents that their son had crossed the line. Kurov's father told him that Kurov was a good boy until he knew Aryan and got obsessed with him. Kurov's mother instead said that it was not Aryan's fault but theirs. She believed that her son only followed the good side of Aryan so he could marry the girl he loved, Neha, and if indeed her child was proven guilty, she would let Aryan throw him in prison, but she begged Aryan not to kill him. In the evening, Aryan and Kurov's parents were seen at the event. Kurov was apparently in the middle of the crowd to witness Aryan's apology in front of everyone. Neha suddenly came and assumed that the man in front of her was Kurov. She came over to tell them that she had managed to get a visa to America. She then approached him just to realize that he was not Kurov when Aryan turned to her. That was when Aryan told her everything and asked her to join him in his plan. Long story short, when Aryan was on stage, he didn't immediately apologize as Kurov wanted, but instead imitated Kurov. He invited Neha to come with him to the stage and confessed his feelings for Neha, because Aryan knew that all this time, Kurov had not dared to do that. Neha also pretended that she didn't know what happened. Aryan then deliberately trapped Kurov by telling everyone that he was the one who had committed several crimes in London on behalf of Aryan, and after hearing that, Kurov, that was already mad, was forced to shoot the gun in his hand toward Aryan. The shooting scared everyone and immediately ran to save themselves. While after seeing the whereabouts of her son, Kurov's mother, who felt disappointed, asked him to get down immediately, but Kurov instead chose to run away. Aryan then rushed to catch him. At a construction site, Aryan finally caught up with Kurov. The fight between them was inevitable. After the intense fight, Aryan said that the game was over. He advised Kurov to be a good person for the sake of everyone he loved. To clear the misunderstanding, Aryan also said that he was just an ordinary person who had many responsibilities too, so he didn't always have the time to meet all his fans. Aryan also told Kurov to start his new life by being himself. Unfortunately, Kurov felt that his hopes had been crushed. He finally decided to end his life. Even though Aryan managed to hold his hands, Kurov deliberately let go of the grip, which made him plunge to his death. Even though his reputation was already cleared, Aryan still had sympathy when he saw Kurov's death news on TV. That was why when his manager came to inform him that his fans were waiting for him in front of his house, Aryan immediately greeted them as he always did every year. Even when he saw Kurov as if he was there, he immediately raised his hands to greet everyone because he no longer wanted his fans to feel the same way as Kurov.